Thank you for staying with us right here as we continue our conversation talking about kindness in leadership. There's definitely room for more kindness in leadership. Our guest is Professor Lalit Johri, and he is a senior fellow in international business at the Syed Business School at the University of Oxford, where he's also director of the Oxford Advanced Management and Leadership Program. Oh, by the way, he's also co-written a book titled Kindness in Leadership. In your book that you've co-written with fellow authors about kindness in leadership, there was, I believe, a chapter that did touch about gender. Let us pose a question for our listeners, because broadly speaking, I would suppose that our listeners would think who would make a kind leader would be perhaps female rather than a male. Now, the book unearthed something different. Share with us what it unearthed.
Yeah, I mean, it is quite intuitive to say that the women would be kinder, because we all understand, try to interpret women from the perspective of what we got from our mother.
Yeah, the nurturing sort.
Nurturing, and very kind and always
more in
caring.
touch with their emotions.
Everything. But being an academic, I have to be very careful. Evidence doesn't necessarily suggest the idea that women are kinder than men. I won't say that 200 interviews across 40, 50 countries is a big universal sample to prove or disprove this idea. But if I were to do a research, my hypothesis will be that kindness is a universal idea. It doesn't matter whether you are a women leader or a men leader, given your own personal beliefs, because kindness, according to our research, is based on your personal beliefs. I mean, as human beings, we have a tendency to internally rationalize all our actions. So we found out that those leaders who were kind and who were supporting the behaviors and decisions based on kindness in their organizations had a system of beliefs. And we have identified those beliefs. And we feel that those beliefs could become the basis for educating the leaders to be more kind. Take, for example, one of the beliefs here is that kind leaders believe in inclusive approach to problem solving. They do not discriminate. Kind leaders respect diversity, gender diversity, racial diversity, cultural diversity. They believe that people are at the center of the success of any organization.
And so they remove all sorts of discrimination, biasness.
Absolutely.
But then again, wouldn't this run counter to the whole, perhaps, idea that if you were to look for people who are like-minded, who are like yourself?
Inclusiveness doesn't mean seeking groupthink, where everybody thinks alike, behaves alike. No. Inclusiveness is about your ability as a leader to work with diversity of opinion, contrarian perspectives, but yet be able to integrate and create a logical structure out of it. That is the meaning of inclusive approach to leadership. So, in my view of the notion of leadership, I don't have to have a all-women organization. I don't have to have a all-men organization. I don't have to have a organization where everybody comes from the same ethnic group. I see those choices as choices which are responsible for weak architecture of the organization.
I was recounting also the experience that I had in Silicon Valley in California, where I was in a Chinese organization. It's quite a big organization, and I did pay a visit to the canteen, and when I looked around, everyone seemed to be from mainland China. I paid a visit to another organization. It's an American organization, and when I went for lunch in their cafeteria, I also did observe that everyone seemed to be from India. So it was rather interesting because it was almost of a certain race or certain culture, and really dependent also on the organization that set up.
And Stanley, I think to be able to explain the dominance of certain ethnic groups and certain gender classes inside organization, you have to go back to the roots of some of the societies where people are coming from. Take, for example, why there would be more software engineers in terms of men and not enough. It may have something to do with choices that some of the families will make about their children in India, for example. It'll be also something to do with what is the level of attainment and achievement on the part of the boys and the girls, because they have to clear certain gateways in terms of finding admission to the colleges.
Right.
So if your graduate profile is 70% boys and 30% girls, your labor market will reflect that. Your organization will reflect that. Because as an organization leader, you cannot create a talent pool unless that talent pool has gone through a certain mechanism of education.
Right. And sometimes you don't really have a choice.
Exactly.
Because these responsibilities and roles are what would be placed upon us in the society that we grow up in or are part of.
Exactly. So I'll give you an example to prove my point. If you go to countries like Norway and Finland, even in technology companies, you will find a very sort of near balanced representation of boys and girls, because they have achieved that level of diversity at the education level, and education is feeding into the organizations. So the whole issue needs to be addressed at a level where children get their education and training and how to make things accessible to both the genders and not deny one particular gender against the other.
With us and speaking about kindness and leadership, Professor Lalit Johri from the Said Business School at the University of Oxford. Let's talk about leadership and kindness in leadership, in particular in action, because I think it's easier to talk about it than to actually put it in practice. And yet, in the book that you've co-written titled Kindness in Leadership, you have also informed us that there can be barriers towards us putting kindness into practice. What are some of these barriers that could thwart our ability to inject kindness in the way we lead in the different roles that we play in society, in our organization as well?
So in our research, we found that one of the most common barrier is the top management leadership team. The way they set the priorities. The priorities overshadow the behavioral choices of the employees. So if you are an investment company, if you are a private equity company, your priorities are so different that often you may not pay enough attention to softer. If you want to call kindness as a softer, I don't call it, but definitely you are made to get productive outcomes, financially productive outcomes based on every minute of the day and every unit of the money that you invest. So that's one thing. So the second thing that may happen is that often the nature of your organization, the kind of architecture that you have, take, for example, this is a hypothetical example. If suppose you are operating a nuclear power plant, if you have a particular episode in the power plant where things may be going wrong, that's a time where hard action take precedence over anything else. It doesn't mean that you are going to risk the life of the people, but it means this is not the time to tell somebody, okay, you can go home and take care of your ailing father or mother, and we will manage.
Right. It's about how critical
is
what
the situation
would come out of it.
Yeah, that's the right word. But this is a hypothetical example. But such examples can become reality in situations in the police, for example. If you have a episode of terrorism in your city, then you have to move fast and quick. But there also we have seen acts of kindness. How the policemen on the streets in London, they were being kind to the victims in terms of giving them CPR and trying to pay more attention once they had subdued the criminals. Then how quickly they changed their role and started to play a greater kind role in terms of protecting the injured people.
Mm. We definitely need more stories of kindness in action in different roles and positions.
Absolutely. So many. I mean, I've been a mountaineer and I've seen acts of kindness on the part of fellow mountaineers in trying to save the lives of, even if you don't know somebody, if you find somebody is in distress on mountains, you do give up your own program and your objective to climb the peak and start helping the other people.
Mm-hmm. Lives matter.
Lives matter.
Is kindness and leadership taught at the school that you're with, the Syed Business School at Oxford?
So we have written a article on that. As you know, Syed Business School is famous for social entrepreneurship. Now, one can see a slight remote connection in terms of business graduates trying to start entrepreneurial activities which have a social impact. But is it a direct demonstration of kindness? It may be a bit too far to stretch the idea of kindness. Currently, kindness is not part of the hard curriculum at the MBA or doctoral program level, but there are some institutions which are beginning to pay attention to it. And compassion is one thought which is being taught, and a lot of research is going on. In countries like United States, and also you do see acts of kindness among some being taught at the level of some religious universities. You do see that.
Would you say it's necessarily best taught from, say, theory or classes rather than real-life examples of hearing the stories of some of the case studies that you have shared, and also role modeling, having it role modeled within an organization, within society, within whichever civic group we may belong to?
Stanley, that's a great question, and it's an evolutionary idea. Initially, many evolutionary ideas start as a thought. People develop some philosophical perspectives. They try to see links with what are the parallel thoughts in different domains: sociology, religion, philosophy, politics. But then at some stage, research has to play its own role. And the objective of research would be to be able to show causal relationship in terms of acts of kindness and its impact on human beings, the employees, and various stakeholders. And in our research, we have developed a circle of causality to show that how kindness can have an impact on the performance of an organization. And put in simple words, kindness promotes trust. Trust is the basis of collaboration. And when you collaborate, your decisions become more inclusive. When your decisions are inclusive, your performance begins to improve. And when your performance improves, you get a lot of stakeholder support. And then you develop a strong reputation. And when you have strong reputation, you attract some of the best talent to come and work for you. So we do find a circle of causality, but I think further research will be required, because this is the first research-based book where we have gone up to a certain level of evidence. But I think more research is required to develop a very strong narrative on thought, actions, and performance, and the impact on the society.
Well, I want to really thank you for your time, Professor Lalit Johri, for joining us for this conversation as we delve into a discussion on kindness in leadership. Thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you, Stanley.